The fourth there was Richard. There was Lady Karen left. Lady Karen was a beautiful and ambidie high society woman. She went up having one of the most disastrous affairs in history, and even becoming a social guest. When Lady Karen met the famous Lord Byron, their affairs started off well enough, but it would end tremendously. After Lord Byron cruelly left Lady Karen, she would send him a present in the mail. When he opened it, he was horrified, and his blood would run cold. But more on this later on. Lady Caroline Lamb, originally known as Caroline Ponsonby, was born on November 13, 1785. She was the only daughter of Frederick and Henrietta Ponsonby, the Earl and Countess of Bessborough. As a child, she had a very frail disposition, and even nearly perished from an illness involving worms. As she grew up, she would of course spend time running around and playing with her upper-class cousins. However, being a rather sickly child, she soon picked up the scandalous habit of taking opiates such as laudanum to cope with her ailments. By her problems, as she entered her teenage years, she would blossom into an extremely beautiful young woman. Her aristocratic family, with its enormous and high connections, had no doubt that their daughter Caroline would land herself an excellent marriage. That is why at the young age of 19, she married the Honorable William Lamb, a man from an equally aristocratic family and with great political ambitions. The marriage was a happy one, with both partners liking one another. However, little did she know, but her mother-in-law despised her from the very beginning. Things started off well, but that would soon change. Caroline became pregnant shortly after the wedding, but sadly, the child would be stillborn. This event was very hard on the young couple. Yet, despite their hardships, they still tried for another child. This was difficult on the young Caroline, whose weaker disposition was not the most suited to the rigors of pregnancy and labor, and her body took a long time to recover. They finally gave birth to a son named George in 1807, as well as a premature daughter in 1809, who died very quickly. Unfortunately for Caroline, these pregnancies took a heavy ordeal on her body, leaving her severely weakened. Things did not become easier when the couple realized that their son George, unfortunately, had mental disabilities, causing them significant distress. Not wanting to send her son to an institution, which was common practice in this era, Lady Caroline kindly insisted on caring for her son at home, a decision which would put stress on her marriage. Despite being a young woman, the stresses in Caroline's life affected her greatly. Her ailing health, her son's challenges, and her husband's ambition for political power were a lot to handle for the young Lady Caroline. The added fact that her mother-in-law despised her and made her life difficult did not help. In addition, her husband's siblings seemed to take after their mother, and did not like Caroline either, often cruelly calling her the little beast. With all these troubles in her life, it was no surprise that she would soon find herself embroiled in an affair. In 1812, at the young age of 26, she would meet the dashing and infamous poet Lord Byron, someone with a reputation for seducing women wherever he went. His attention soon fell on Lady Caroline herself. Byron was immediately smitten with Caroline. However, at first she ignored his advances, calling Byron mad, bad, and dangerous to know. Despite this, her attitude would change after reading some of his poetry, and she reached out to him with a letter. In response, Byron went straight for her, visiting her in person, and within a few days, their affair was in full swing. Their relationship was tumultuous from the very beginning. They would play games with each other, criticizing each other publicly, and then sneaking off together in private. They were both infatuated with each other. Byron soon gave her a pet name, calling her Caro. He famously called her the cleverest, most agreeable, absurd, amiable, perplexing, dangerous, fascinating little being that lives now or ought to have lived 2,000 years ago. Their intense obsession with each other nearly propelled them into the realm of bigamy. the act of being married to two partners at the same time. Carolyn's desperation reached such heights that she implored Lord Byron to marry her. Despite the inconvenient fact that she was already married to William, this reckless proposition shows how infatuated she was with him. Had they actually gone ahead, the consequences would have been nothing short of scandalous. All the enough, Lord Byron was very good friends with Carolyn's mother-in-law, the very one who hated her so much. When she found out about Carolyn's affair, she would put all her efforts into ruining it. She made sure that her son, Carolyn's husband William, would be promptly informed. However, despite William and Carolyn's strained relationship and this new revelation about Carolyn's extramarital affair, William was not incredibly bothered and did not divorce her. However, unfortunately for Carolyn, Byron soon tired of her, breaking things off in the August of 1812 after only half a year together. Little did Carolyn know, but one of the reasons Lord Byron dumped her was that he was very in debt and was searching for a rich woman to marry who would solve his financial troubles. After Lord Byron left her, Lady Carolyn was seen as a bit of a social pariah in the eyes of high society, something of damaged goods, and in case you're wondering, Byron's reputation didn't really suffer at all. To help her as best she could, Carolyn's husband William sent her off to Ireland in order that she might recuperate better in peace and quiet. Lady Carolyn, being all alone and cooped up in Ireland, would end up not being able to get over her ex-lover. She ended up writing letters to Byron. These he would reply to, and so starting correspondence between them. However, despite their correspondence, when Carolyn returned to London in 1813 and sought Byron out, he let her know that in no uncertain terms they were done. Carolyn also soon realized that Byron was already in a relationship with someone else, the Countess of Oxford. To add insult to injury, Byron cruelly began to insult Carolyn, both publicly and privately. He complained that he was haunted by a skeleton, which was referring to Lady Carolyn's weight loss and diminished appearance. In a particularly dramatic incident during a ball to honor the Duke of Wellington, Byron had the audacity to insult Carolyn in front of all her peers. In response to this, Carolyn hugely overreacted and caused a major scene. This incident did not help Carolyn's image at all, with many unfairly assuming that she only did this for attention. The situation would take a darker turn when Carolyn's obsession with Byron escalated to the point where she began to stalk him. Her relentless pursuit led her to even dressing up in various disguises in an attempt to gain entry to his residence. This behavior highlights the length to which she was willing to go to maintain a connection with Byron. In 1815, Carolyn, still unable to move past her relationship with Byron, was devastated upon hearing the news that Byron had married a wealthy heiress named Annabella Milbank. This was a painful blow to Carolyn, exacerbating her feelings of loss and rejection. The marriage not only marked the end of any lingering hopes she might have harbored, but also intensified the sense of betrayal and heartbreak that had long plagued her. Just like Carolyn, Byron's new marriage did not end up going very smoothly. However, barely a year into the marriage, Annabella left with their newborn daughter Byron, not exactly having been a very good husband. This, combined with Byron's excessive debts and rumors that he had even slept with his own half-sister, led him to becoming a social pariah, just as had happened to Carolyn. In disgrace, he would flee the country. In 1816, in an act of revenge, Lady Carolyn published a novel titled Glenarvan. Although it was presented as a work of fiction, the novel very transparently revealed many secrets from her tumultuous affair with Lord Byron. This bold move would shock society. Although the book was published anonymously, the writing was so thinly disguised that it was clear it had been written by Carolyn. One of the aristocratic women in the novel, who was ridiculed, the Countess of Jersey, upon finding out what was written, made sure that all of Carolyn's memberships to exclusive clubs were revoked. This time, she was truly out. However, for Carolyn, it wasn't all bad. Her book was a huge success, and shortly afterwards, she struck up another affair, this time with the famous Duke of Wellington, fresh off of his victory over Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo. Over the years, Carolyn and Byron engaged in a rather toxic pattern of behavior, frequently alluding to each other in their writings. These references were far from friendly, often laden with bitterness and resentment. In 1824, Lord Byron fell ill and tragically passed away while in Greece. The news of his death was devastating for Carolyn, and she reportedly fell ill herself upon learning of his demise. During Byron's funeral procession, her distress overwhelmed her, and she collapsed dramatically in public. Byron's death seemed to be the final straw for Carolyn's well-being. Her behavior would become erratic. She would have fits of rage and break things, or ride her horse crazily around town. She even stopped caring about her appearance, showing up to engagements entirely messy and unkempt. Throughout all of this drama, Carolyn's husband William still remained by her side, refusing his family's wishes that he divorce his wife and leave her for good. However, it was actually Carolyn who finally suggested a divorce in the end. After leaving William, things only went downhill for Carolyn. She took up residence in a new place called Brockton Hall. It was during this time that she became an alcoholic, as well as addicted to laudanum, the opiate that she had used as a child for her health issues. By 1827, at the age of 41, Carolyn's health was very poor. She was even under the full-time supervision of a doctor, as she was suffering from edema, a buildup of fluid in the tissues. Near the end of her life, it appeared that Lady Carolyn was finally able to let go of her obsessive attachment to Lord Byron. Instead, her thoughts turned to her ex-husband, William Lamb. Reflecting on their relationship, she remarked, "He is the only person who has never failed me." In a final gesture of reconciliation, Lady Carolyn requested that William visit her one last time. Demonstrating his dutiful character and sense of duty, William traveled all the way from his post in Ireland just to be by her side. Their reunion was brief and bittersweet, as Lady Carolyn passed away just a few days after William's arrival. She was only 42. William's presence in Carolyn's final days provided her with a sense of comfort and solace. Her ex-husband went on to have an immensely successful political career, ultimately rising to the position of Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in 1835. This achievement marked a significant milestone in British politics. Sadly, Carolyn would never witness this remarkable accomplishment or what their life together could have been had things turned out differently. Lady Carolyn had lived a tumultuous life. She struggled with so many difficulties and had many flaws with her erratic and scandalous behavior, though she was rather unfairly maligned for her struggles with mental health, something that was not well understood in the 19th century. Despite how her behavior was judged and how we may judge her today, none of it can excuse the creepiest thing she ever did. Shortly after Byron left her, Carolyn got a very strange idea. She decided to give Byron a present to remember her by, but the present she gave him was utterly disturbing. Byron, while living abroad, opened the box and found a note from Carolyn, professing her continued love for him. Below the note was a lock of hair. Shockingly, it was not a hair from her head. Instead, it had been plucked from downstairs, and gruesomely enough, the hairs were still bloody. What she was thinking when she did this, we will never know, but it is a very strange way to declare your love for someone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give us a like and subscribe to